Welcome back to the Royce White Show. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And you're watching Real America's Voice, headquarters of the Ultra MAGA and America First movement. A lot of things going on this past week. It's good to be back with you this Saturday morning. Good morning to everybody out there in the audience. We got the great Steve Bannon coming up at the top of the hour. Anxiously await War Room always on Saturdays. Bannon does a deep dive, so I'm a huge fan of the Saturday morning War Room show. A lot of interesting things happened this week. Jimmy Carter passed. His funeral was in the past couple of days, and there was a bunch of great content, I would say, if you can have great content from a funeral. There was a bunch of great video clips of President Donald Trump sitting next to, and they sat him right next to Barack Obama, which, I mean, somebody had to be, working the back end there for that one. And George Bush Jr. and Hillary and Bill Clinton, Kamala Harris, Al Gore, Mike Pence, Judas Pence. So it was a who's who's of political juggernauts, obviously. Jimmy Carter, the president himself, very important figure in history, despite what you think about his presidency. I won't speak about that here. But there was a moment that went viral where it appeared that Barack Obama and Donald Trump were sharing what was a casual laugh or, a somewhat friendly moment, given how adversarial the two are politically. And they caught it at just the right moment where Kamala Harris was in the row ahead and turned her head back to the left to catch those two having a laugh, and she did not look too happy about it. And, hey, you got the short end of the stick there, Kamala, and they threw you out there to the wolves, and they had no real plan, and that is what it is. It's, history now. But they're going to come back with a vengeance. And speaking of coming back with a vengeance, this first video we got here of Fetterman on Fox News laying into the Democrat Party and becoming what will presumably be the new center of controlled opposition, where the Democrats either, ingenuine or as a ploy, tried to sort of cozy up next to or wrap themselves in the America First and MAGA way. And hey, if they're genuine converts, like the great Steve Bannon said last weekend, a couple of days before that, we love converts. Us Catholics, we were in the convert business a while back. We love converts, but the converts sit in the back, and they learn the faith. They learn the ways of the faith. We love converts. I'm just not ready to throw any of these MAGA Democrats the reins to the entire ship on face value, and especially not John Fetterman. But you gotta love John Fetterman's sort of brash and matter of factness here in this clip. Let's roll the clip.
There's a lot of talk about Greenland, for example. Now, and I know there's a lot of freakouts, and of course I would never support taking it by force. But I do think it's a responsible conversation if they were open to acquiring it, and whether just buying it outright. I mean, if anyone think that's bonkers, it's like, well, remember the Louisiana purchase? Oh, I think Alaska was a great deal too. $50 million, I think it was. It was referred to as Seward's Folly, and now that was Alaska now. So, I mean, open to having all kinds of conversations as well. And now I don't think it's not helpful to freak out, but some things might work out, some may not, but that's part of ongoing dialogue. But he hasn't even taken office in 2 weeks. And, we really need to pace ourselves if we're going to freak out over every last tweet or every last conversation or press conference. Because, but
that's good. That's a good one, John. I like it. I like it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, we are here to work together. Yeah. And some things we can agree or disagree. But I think that's how DC works.
John Fetterman, ladies and gentlemen, Democrat senator, going to become one of the figureheads trying to move the Democrat Party back to some sanity, some rational, moderate middle, which has to come towards the America First way because globalism is out of control. It's just the way it is. The uniparty, the spending, the federal government, the Federal Reserve, these agencies, they're out of control. So any sane, rational politics, even if just a disingenuous ploy and play for power, is still going to have to drift towards the MAGA movement. So come on over, John. We welcome everybody who sees the ridiculousness of the Democrat Party and the mainstream media that freaks out over discussions about purchasing Greenland as though, big acquisitions of land have never happened in this nation's history. It's just a revisionist way to look at America and, say whatever people say about America, which, we know what the Democrats would say. They hate it here, but yet they don't want to move anywhere else. As far as Greenland goes, I don't know. I don't know. It could be good. It depends on the price. I would say, what's the price? What are the terms? What I will say is that's a pretty big chunk of land to have to defend. If before we get to buying, and I was one of the first people a year and a half ago saying annex this, annex that, and I'm still a proponent of annexing Mexico, at least a fair amount there in northern Mexico. And I'm a proponent of annexing Canada. Now, some people have said online, I saw some people criticize and say, oh, we don't need the Canadians. They're all leftists. And you got to realize there's only 30 million people that live in Canada altogether. And a fair amount of them are what you would call conservatives. Don't ever forget the truckers convoy there in Canada far outdid any freedom convoys that we had here in America, for the most part. Okay, we had some as well, but the Canadian truckers went pretty hard, and God bless them. So there's some good people there in Canada. Yeah, Canada is a different place, it's got a different culture. Yeah, I mean, they're neck deep in socialism. This kind of, the way of the world up there. I lived there for 2 years, but there's some sane and rational people up there as well. The real issue, and this has to do with Mexico or Canada or Greenland or, wherever else. Some people even flirted with Australia. I thought that was hilarious. Good luck fighting the crown on that. Not that the crown has much juice anyway. Who can they fight? What can they defend? They can't defend Ukraine. They can't defend Eastern Europe. They can't defend anything without us. So, I mean, any Commonwealth is just a figment of people's imagination, more for nostalgic purposes than anything else. There's no functional Commonwealth. It's all America, Pax Americana. But going forward, we got to deal with some real issues here. And I said it a couple of weeks back, but I'll reiterate today. Anybody out there, any one of these military industrial complex jerk-offs, for lack of a better term, that tells you, oh, America is as strong as it's ever been. And, we're gonna roll up our sleeves and roll on out there into the Aegean or the Mediterranean with the aircraft carriers and blase, is lying to you. The first thing that has to be addressed are these hypersonic missiles, because aircraft carriers are big, they move slow, and they sink fast. And if hypersonic missile technology is something that has really made its way into the hands of the Chinese army or government or the Russian, obviously the Russians do have hypersonic missiles. But look, this isn't just a theory. This isn't just conjecture, okay? The last 15 times the Department of Defense, the Pentagon, has war gamed out a fight with China, every single time we lose. Just let that sink in and then reevaluate how you feel about these military industrial complex shills. Every single time the Pentagon, over the last 15 or so times, every single time we've war gamed a fight with China, we lose. Now, I don't know, you could say that's propaganda or disinformation given out by our military to seem weak when we're really strong. Maybe we have hypersonic missiles. Maybe we have, advanced drone technology, and maybe. But as an American citizen who has no proof of those things that are probably highly classified or, blacked out, black budget, whatever the case may be, I can't advise that we get involved in any long-standing military conflict until somebody tells me what we're doing with these hypersonic missiles. And these aircraft carrier platform power projection is a relic of the past, and your government knows it. And these pundits, if they're worth their salt, they know it. The Chinese know it. The Russians know it. There's a race happening right now for a new type of supremacy militarily. And obviously, the purchase of Greenland would mean that we would have to also defend Greenland. And, that seems like a tall task as of right now. Maybe people know some things that I don't know. That's completely possible. You're listening to the Royce White Show here on Saturday morning. Welcome back to the Royce White Show. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Again, you're watching Real America's Voice, headquarters of the Ultra MAGA and America First movement. We'll go a little philosophical for a moment. We got the great Professor Penn in studio today, taking over for the second half of the show to talk about the LA fires in a way that's novel and historically relevant. It's a great tragedy what's happening in LA. Obviously, DEI and stolen elections, rigged elections, puppet politicians, people who are sold out, have consequences, dire consequences, and end up being on the front doorsteps of American citizens. We've seen it before. We'll continue to see it going forward. It's, and some of it is nature. I'm not going to throw any conspiracy theories out about, and ever since, Maui and the fires there in Maui, American citizens have great skepticism about some of these so-called natural disasters. We hear rumors, or not even rumors. I mean, I think there's pretty clear evidence of weather systems like HARP that are used, and weather warfare and things. People become skeptical, and that speaks to a general lack of trust in our government and our institutions, which we are more than right to have. But some things are Mother Nature as well. And I can't say definitively here because I don't know. And I don't put anything past our government, especially the shadow government, especially the deep state. I don't know. I will say that it was a vindication of Donald Trump to hear a clip from the episode he was on Joe Rogan right before the election, where he talked about the California fires. I mean, he literally, laid out a sort of projection, you could say, where, hey, when I'm president, when I win, when I was president, we try to do certain things to help California in terms of water flow and, diverting water to certain areas that, don't have great water supply. And even just clearing out the dead wood and the leaves and the brush, and, it builds up for years and years. And you get all these government agencies or state agencies or national park, protection agencies that don't want people to tend to these forests or to this land. And even that has consequences. I mean, even secondarily and in a tertiary, these still consequences for people's incompetence. And obviously, again, some of this is natural, but some of it definitely could have been handled better. And I'm going to let Professor Penn talk about that in a moment. Again, back to my point about where we are militarily. Greenland could be good. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea. What I'm saying is we've been told a great lie here. We all know it. It doesn't feel good. It's scary. It's scary when your government, or let's say the consortium of world powers, know things that you don't know that have consequences as serious as that of advanced technological warfare. It's scary. People want to just kind of check out from that and go, let's leave it to the big boys. Let's leave it to the people who get paid, the experts. In this day and age, anytime we leave things to the experts, I'm throwing a flag on the play. I'm skeptical. Show me the experts. Show me what credentializes them. Show me where they went to school. Show me where they went to university. Show me where they got their PhDs. You know, show me something that I can trust. And I can barely trust that. I mean, it was funny watching George Bush Jr. there roll into Jimmy Carter's funeral, and he walks right past Donald Trump, doesn't shake his hand or really even acknowledge him, and he gives Barack Obama, the good old boy, a tap on the gut. You know, hey man, how you doing? And why do I say that? People had this clip going viral, though these four presidents sitting together, and people sending me the clip all week long over the last couple of days, and I keep telling them the person with the most juice in the row is George Bush Jr. Still to this day. I mean, if you think that it gets more powerful than the Bushes, then you don't understand how government works. You don't understand how power works. You don't understand what power is in this country or around the world. The security state, the intelligence community, the deep state, the government behind the government has all the real power. And Daddy Bush was the center of that power. And Donald Trump threatens that power in every way. Now, are we going to recoalesce a MAGA movement around a new American globalism? Donald Trump's calling it the dawn of the golden age of America. Okay, you know, there's some cool in that, Mr. President. I can roll with that, with conditions. The same thing I said about. I was asked. I reran an interview. You guys can watch it if you go on my X. I reran an interview of me with a local news person, WCCO TV. I think KSTP, local KSTP TV here in Minneapolis, and a gentleman named Tom Hauser. And they went so far out of their way to make me anti-Semitic. About, it must have been 20 minutes out of a 38-minute interview had something to do with Israel or Jewish people or anti-Semitism. And it finally got to the point where he just flat out asked me, do you support funding for Israel? And I said, yeah, with conditions. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, what do you mean? What do I mean? I mean, with conditions. I mean, every single bit of foreign aid in this country must have conditions. And, well, what are the conditions? The conditions are we get off every side of the war, every side of the trade. Those would be my conditions. But, you know, I mean, I'd have to have a majority vote in order to move something like that, which reminds me, the Laken Riley Act, another thing that Fetterman banged the Democrat drum about in his recent media tour. There was a vote taken, and only 9 U.S. senators voted no for the Laken Riley Act. And one of them just happened to be Tina Smith. Tina Smith, come on down. Jerk off senator extraordinaire. Tina Smith, for some reason, really dislikes American citizens and the dangers that come with unfettered illegal immigration. I mean, imagine the arrogance she must feel. Imagine the comfort she must feel with the citizens and the constituents of Minnesota that she could vote no to a bill that is overwhelmingly agreed upon, even if just the Democrats needing to save face for the immigration debacle that they caused. And she still votes no. I mean, this is what we're dealing with up here in the belly of the beast. It's why we call it the belly of the beast. We got 2 Democrat senators, one, failed vice president candidate and goofball, and Tim Walz, who I'm sure they're going to break out the lawfare on me any day now, which, we've come to expect here in the MAGA movement. But Tina Smith is a goofball and an arrogant one. And this is dangerous. I mean, I don't want to look, I feel very uncomfortable as a citizen of Minnesota that these people are even in power. I feel especially uncomfortable that Donald Trump has to rely upon them to support him to make this country great again. And, some of it's going to be out of their control, but it's across the aisle. Like I was saying, George Bush, let's say, throwing the white flag and just being cordial and shaking Donald Trump's hand at this funeral. Maybe there was an angle I didn't see. Maybe they shook hands already. But certainly the bad blood between the MAGA movement and the Bush junta has never been, more hot and contentious. Yeah, we're not neocons, and we have to make sure that we keep it that way. They asked me what my conditions would be for funding in Israel. I'd say, hey, you got to get off every side of the trade. We can't be on all sides of the war. If we're on both sides of the war, chances are we're probably in it for the money. And that's just a general principle about war all around the world. And we are at war all around the world all the time. I think Greenland could be good under the right conditions. I think Mexico could be good under the right conditions. I even think Canada could be good under the right conditions with the right approach and leadership. For everybody out there who says, "Oh, this is just taken away from American citizens again. This isn't America first." Well, I mean, slow your roll now. I mean, if you really want to go hardcore America first, the first thing we'd be cutting off there is our economic relationship with China. Yeah, that's got to go. And that means a lot of the things you enjoy are going to go. And if you're okay with that, then, hey, I'm all for it. You know, I don't think that you need another, I don't know, a trivial item that comes from Shein or one of these other, funky Chinese manufacturers. I don't think you need another, what is it? What is it? I don't know. Laser pointer or whatever it is. I mean, I just don't think you need another one. But maybe you think otherwise. And so don't displace your angst about your own radical materialism on our ambition to clarify the geopolitical landscape. If my man Donald J. Trump thinks Greenland would be a good acquisition, let him come to the American people and tell us why. And maybe, just maybe, it will be. But we got to be realistic, like I said. The military thing we got to sort out. First and foremost, we got to get a Secretary of Defense, appointed. Hopefully we get Pete Hegseth through the process. And we got to work through what's going on there in the Pentagon. And hopefully the American people can have some clarity about our real strengths and weaknesses as a nation militarily, because it's going to determine a lot. Again, you're watching the Royce White Show. That's it for me this weekend. You got the great Professor Penn for the next two segments, talking more about the LA fires. Again, I appreciate everybody in the audience. We are working diligently to get the Daily Show up and running. When the Daily Show is up and running, you get to look at my ugly mug and hear my ugly voice every single day of the week. And that is going to be a fun time. Thank you. I appreciate your viewership and listenership this weekend and in the future. The fight continues. Godspeed. The great Professor Penn is next, and Steve Bannon at the top of the hour.
Welcome back, and good morning, fellow American citizens. This is David Penn, your guest host, coming to you from the studios of Free People Radio in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the belly of the beast, what I like to call communism in the upper Midwest. I want to thank my co-worker at Free People Radio, senatorial candidate Royce White, for giving me this opportunity to be here this morning and take a couple segments here on this show. So glad to do it. Royce wanted me to talk about the fires in L.A., but first I do want to say Royce is the first African-American endorsed candidate for Senate ever in the history in the state of Minnesota. And he did that as a Republican. Why do I say it? It's a time of political realignment. And when you see one of our great cities burn to the ground, that would seem to me to indicate it's time to rethink our politics. Now, I'm going to speak as a parent and as a friend, because my son is in Los Angeles, and so is one of my very best friends. Well, my son, his family, and the dog had to leave their home. They were evacuated because their neighborhood burnt to the ground. As a parent, I have to tell you, I did worry about him. Now, I didn't worry that much, in full disclosure, because I raised my son to be self-governing. I know he can take care of business if he's called upon to do so, and he did. I have a very close friend in Los Angeles, a brother, so to speak. He lives in a neighborhood called Brentwood. It's actually a quite expensive, well-to-do neighborhood in Los Angeles. His neighborhood's on fire, and he has his bags packed. But he does not want to leave his home, and I'll tell you why. His insurance has been canceled. Yes, his fire insurance was canceled. And so were many, many other hundreds of thousands of citizens had their fire insurance canceled either before this event happened or right now, right when you need them. You know, hey, you're in good hands, right? This is a complex problem in a complex system. Like an airplane. When an airplane crashes, it doesn't crash because of one event or two events. It's a cascade of events that take that plane from 40,000 feet in the air to the ground. Los Angeles is vastly more complex than an airplane, and it's a failing, complex system. Why do we have government? That's the first question I ask myself. Why do I have government? Is it to operate a worldwide empire, in a sense, being the bouncer for the British Empire? Is that really our role? Is that what we do with our government? Well, maybe if the basics are fulfilled. And what's the basic? What is the basic building block of government? Protect my property. Now, why I say property and not my life is, since time immemorial, people have known that if there's a problem and your life is threatened, generally speaking, the constabulary can't make it until after the event is over. The constabulary comes to clean up and contain the problem. But property rights and property protection is the essence of governance. And when you watch a major American city burn to the ground, that is a failure of the basic function of government. The basic. It means that government really is not fulfilling its mandate. The social compact between the elected officials and those that elected them, we the people, that social compact, protect our property, has been ruptured. It's been broken. It's been irrevocably destroyed. And all of us, all American citizens, need to look at this. We need to look at it, and we need to understand what's going on here. Now, the people that created the conditions for the failure of this complex system could have been very ill-intended, or they could have been very incompetent. What's the difference? The city's on fire. The city is still burning today. My son is still evacuated today. My best friend is still, his bag packed. His bags are packed today. Today, Saturday. Saturday, just 9 days before the inauguration of the 47th president, Donald Trump, who is what? A property developer. A property developer who understands how government interfaces with property owners. You know, I don't have any 8x10 glossies of this, but I've heard a rumor for many years that in our great founding document, the unalienable rights were originally conceived to be life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, because the Republicans that formed our country were rejecting monarchy when the king or queen owned all the land and everybody else was a feudal serf. The founders realized that if we could but own the land and keep it in our families, we could be sovereigns of our own lives. Yes, that's what republicanism is. And I don't mean the Republican Party. I mean the philosophy of republicanism, the philosophy of republicanism that gave birth to the Republic of the United States of America. Let us hope that in 9 days, And I'm going to just tell it the way I see it, I'm going to call the balls and strikes the way I'm seeing them. This could be economic warfare. Economic warfare. You know, that property that's burning out in Los Angeles is some of the most valuable property on the planet. And now the insurers, because of the way the governance has handled water rights and water distribution in the state, they will not insure because of the way the Democrat Party has implemented certain United Nations agendas relative to the forest and nature and the earth. The insurers suddenly will not insure. And who are the insurers? They're the banks. The insurer is the bank. The bank has removed its support from individual citizens who own property in the state of California, making that property much less valuable, particularly since the structures have been burnt to the ground. Did it happen on purpose? Did it happen by accident? I don't know. You don't know. We can only look at the poetry of what's happening, the story that's going to get told. People cannot afford to live in California. The taxes are too high. The crime is too high. The water does not exist. The city is burning to the ground. What does that mean to me as an American citizen? It means my government is failing me. I'm sure they have an agenda. They're either ill-intended or incompetent, but there is an agenda, and it doesn't seem to be about protecting my property rights. And what happened in California because of the semi-arid desert climate there could happen here in Minnesota, where we have a semi-frigid climate here. What happens if the power goes out here in Minnesota? I just interviewed on the Professor Penn podcast this past Thursday night an elected representative here in Minnesota, Walter Hudson, and he expressed to me his concerns about the power supply here in Minnesota. What is our government doing? What is our government doing if it's not protecting our property rights? Well, if it's not going to protect our rights, isn't it time to realign? Isn't it wonderful that here in Minnesota, the Republican Party, the delegates to our Republican State Convention endorsed a black, young, charismatic candidate to run for Senate? Do we not need voices of honesty in every elected political office in this country? I say we do. How do we get there? It's us. It's 100% up to us. We, the people, have got to get engaged. We have to have President Trump's back. It's not going to happen without us. We need to know that. If we choose to stay passive, if we choose to do like we've done, we're going to watch our cities burn to the ground. Please, I implore you, I beseech you, find a way to get involved in your local politics. Whatever it is, however it works for you, follow the path, follow a way, work yourself into a position where you can support in any way that you can, even if it's just choosing where you buy your products, supporting RAV. For example, whatever you can do it so that this citizens movement continues to grow, so we continue to convert people like John Fetterman, bringing them into not this polarity of right versus left, not this scam of we hate each other, but no, we're all American citizens and we wish to love our neighbor as we wish our neighbor to love us. Thank you very much. This is David Penn, your guest host on the Royce White Show here on Real America's Voice. I'll be right back after these commercial messages. Welcome back to the Royce White Show here on Real America's Voice. This is David Penn, guest hosting for my cohort here at Free People Radio, Mr. Royce White. In the last segment, we were talking about those fires in LA, and as I was getting ready to come back on air, I thought of something I want to share with you. I was thinking about water, and I was thinking about water rights. They call it riparian rights. That's a legal concept. 40% of the water that's consumed in California is consumed by the agriculture industry, agribusiness. I don't know how much people get taught about geography or economy anymore, but California grows and delivers a very large percentage of the agricultural products that you and I consume in our everyday life. And it's called the Central Valley. And the Central Valley has been in conflict with the LA Basin, which is really desert, over water rights since the beginning of the state. There's a great movie, you might want to watch it. It's called Chinatown. It's fallen into disrepute because the director, Roman Polanski, got involved in some very unsavory issues in his life. If you can go look it up, we don't have time to talk about it this morning. But this is a great film noir starring Jack Nicholson, and it talks a lot about, the subplot is about the battle over water rights in early Los Angeles, pre-World War II Los Angeles, when the population was oh so very tiny as compared to what California's population is today. So California is one of the economic engines of the world, not just of the United States, of the world. And there's economic warfare. I've been in business and self-governing as a business person since, believe it or not, 1979. And what I've watched over that long period of time is a coarsening of business relationships between counterparties. And when I say a coarsening, it was always caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. But we had kind of a James Bondish way of doing things, live and let live. I mean, we were, everybody that was playing, we could get down. But we didn't want to. We wanted everybody to succeed. That was the business culture that I grew up in. The business culture I grew up in is we were friendly with the police. We were friendly with the fire department. We were involved in the community. Our competitors were actually our friends because the pie was expanding. There was more for everybody. If you worked hard, there was opportunity. Well, somewhere back in the 90s, when we marveled at our great intellectual and technological capability of creating the computer, one of the fruits of the scientific method, which really, if you want to break it down, gets its funding from the military. As Royce was saying in the second segment, we, the people, are on both sides of so many conflicts because we, the people, our primary business model, our political economy, is about war. It was not always that way. Our country did not always depend. Its spine was not always a permanent military industrial machine, which stretches into our universities, our medical insurers and medical delivery systems. The entire system, this complex system, depends on the creation, the delivery, and the deployment of weapons of war. Okay, I'm an American citizen. What has that got to do with water rights? Well, what are we really supposed to be doing here? What is America really about? This is why we have a fight. This is why the so-called two parties have this kind of theater competition. But the real fight, the one that's not theater, is inside the Republican Party. That's where you have the American citizens in conflict with what people call the establishment. If any of these labels mean anything anymore, I don't know. What really matters is, are we going to have self-governance or are we going to have tyranny? And the self-governance has to involve some kind of interdependency because there's hundreds of millions of us. So we have to recalibrate our government starting in 9 days so that it's not so centralized, so that it's not so militaristic, so that it's not so incompetent or ill-intended. And we the people have elected Donald Trump. And Royce was talking about the conflict between Donald Trump and Barack Obama. But Royce said that the person with the real juice in the room, where the real conflict showed itself, was the seemingly lack of engagement between George Jr., and Donald Trump. Well, let me just say, Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan, that's two phenomenal Republican presidents, candidates, figures in 100 years. And that's about how these dudes come off the tree. Or ladies, seldom do we get politicians with the kind of magnetism, the charisma, and the vision of a Ronald Reagan or a Donald Trump. Well, guess what? Ronald Reagan was in conflict with George W.'s father, George H.W. Yes, George H.W. was Ronnie's vice president. Yes, he was. But that's because the best way to control the opposition is to lead it. And that's what Ronald did. Ronald Reagan, a great president, when he defeated George Bush in 1980 in the primaries, rather than fight with him from the outside, he brought him into the administration and gave him some tasks because he was a great politician. He knew how the game was played. And just like Donald Trump, he was formerly a Democrat in California, formerly a Democrat, a union leader. Donald Trump, formerly a Democrat in the state of New York. Now, this is very different. A developer in New York who's a Democrat because the whole real estate environment there is succeeding or failing because of Democrats, and Ronald Reagan being a Democrat, a union leader. It's different, but it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same. Both of them came into their older years. You know that old saying, if you're not a Democrat when you're young, you don't have a heart. But if you're not a nationalist, when you get old, you don't have a brain. Both of them came in with a sensitivity to their fellow citizens. Their fellow citizens. This makes Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump both unique in the pantheon of Republican Party candidates. They came in with the background loving their neighbors as they love themselves. Yes, that might sound strange, but that's what their fertile soil that they popped up from taught them to believe. And now we have Donald Trump as a president. And whoa, wouldn't it be great? And do I expect it? Yes. That the economic warfare that I suffer, that you suffer through inflation, regulation, taxation, that warfare is relieved by a president who believes in the independent self-governance of any citizen who seeks the blessings of being an American citizen. This is a big change. In fact, I think it's the biggest change in our country since Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1861 to bring an end to slavery. And in a very similar way, I feel Donald Trump, President Trump, has been elected by we the people to bring an end to the slavery business model, this military-industrial complex dependent business model that has we the people funding both sides of every war on this planet. When you go to buy your necessities at the big box store this afternoon, as I will be doing with Mrs. Professor Penn, when you walk through the store, look for products that are made here in the United States of America and ask yourself, is it worth it to be self-governing? Because the globalization of our supply chains has made us dependent on government. and President Trump will be taking that chair on the 20th, and we are told that shock and awe is coming. And I will say, as a participant in the tire business, and those of you that know me know that I have TireGet.com, where I actually provide tires for my audience. I'm hoping that Donald Trump will, in fact, apply that shock and awe with tariffs so that our supply chain might start to heal, so that our supply chain might start to be profitable again. Because what the Democrat has done is waged unending economic warfare upon the citizens. And when you see what happened in California, hey, that's just an outstanding example. Like an exclamation point at the end of the play, hey, we can burn you down. And we don't want that here. I as an American citizen, do not want my government to have the power, either ill-intended or incompetent, to destroy my life. So, with great hope, optimism, I want to wish you the best Happy New Year. Drink a lot of water. Look what happens when an environment is short on water. It becomes inflamed. So as a little tip at the end of the broadcast, make sure you're getting all the water you need every day. It'll help reduce the inflammation that you might be suffering. It'll make you healthier. It's good for all of us to have water. This is David Penn, your guest host here. Here